Hello, and welcome to episode 5 of Journey of Elaina. It is Friday again, that time of the week which has come around so fast. We're already on episode 5. This week's episode was different. So last week we had a very dark, spooky episode, and it was a little bit creepy, which I think, because Halloween is literally tomorrow as I'm recording, it would have been cool to have the episode switched around so we had a bit more of a creepy episode before Halloween. But I will take it because we are seeing the return of a character who we saw in episode 1. So far, we've seen Elaina take a more episodic journey, and to be fair, we still have an episodic episode, but we have a character come back, which is the first time we've seen a character actually brought back into the story. So we open with Elaina, and she's taking a walk through town. She sees a book vendor. I believe it's a book vendor, and on it is The Adventures of Fran. I made the connection quite quickly. Somehow she doesn't, where obviously Fran was the tutor we saw in episode 1. Took her on and decided she was actually going to teach her fairly because she saw how hard Elaina was trying. And we even see pictures, and somehow Elaina doesn't initially make the connection, despite the two looking the same. Quick little note that Elena's pointy shoes especially mainly in the UK, I don't know if this is anywhere else in the world, witches have pointy shoes. So if you ever wear pointy shoes, and it's probably going to be your older folk around the countryside, they might say that your shoes are witchy. You got witchy pointy shoes. So it's nice to see that. There's a few times where the focus goes in on her feet, so it's quite nice to see it. Whether it's the same thing, I don't know. And this week's episode is actually the flashback the prior events that led up to the moment of her walking in the streets, seeing the book, where she remembers that she visited a country 6 months ago. She went to Royal Celestria, and that is going to be our episode, the episode which took place 6 months prior. I've said this a few times, but the towns in this anime really do remind me of Europe. And this week's episode reminds me a bit of Venice and Paris at the same time, where we see a market square and we see lots of magic performers. So this world already off to quite a nice start. We do get to see quite a bit of the world that we're in for Celestria. It's really, really nice. I like the details they go into, and there's a sequence coming up where we get to see even more of the town itself. And we see that there are magical street performers, and everybody in this country seems to be very friendly with magic. Magic is everywhere. Magic is there to make people happy. Elaina walks towards a building which turns out to be the Royal Magic Academy. It really does look like the Wizard of Oz's castle from the original movie, where she goes, I want to have a quick look. It's probably not okay, but I'm going to do it anyway, where we see the more rule-breakery aspect of Elaina. And she uses some magic and the gates unfurl, like these weeds, which I like the way the gates did that. And she gets told off by this kind of caretaker, I presume, for trespassing. And he's like, well, you shouldn't be here. But then he realises she's a witch, and he does actually apologise. And I'm kind of like, well, did you not see the fact that she used a wand on the gate? He must have been 2 seconds behind her when he goes, oi, you're not supposed to be there. But it turns out you're still not allowed in without permission, witch or not. We cut to her flying up above, looking for somewhere to stay, where we get a bit more of a taste of the world that we're in. We can see there are people flying around everywhere. So there's a witch who's delivering newspapers. There's guys carrying things on their brooms in a very... it looks really scary. The way they do it is so precariously balanced. And then everybody around the area is so used to flying. Everybody's really friendly and happy. And you get that quite happy with the colours as well. The whole town we see is full of colour, full of life. And then she gets stopped by 2 students. I knew they were students just because they were in the kind of proper witchy robes, almost Harry Potter-esque. And they tell her, you need to come with us without asking any questions. Elaina, being Elaina, is like, I'm not going to go with you, so why should I? I don't want to. To be fair, if some people suddenly jumped in front of me saying you're coming with me without asking questions, I too would probably be like, no, I'm not going with you. Sorry. She suddenly gets cornered by even more students who are there to catch her. Noting that the two who initially stopped her, which is the blonde boy and the girl, they are almost like your very typical stereotypes as characters. The boy's very overly confident, he kind of winks, and you get the diamond go towards Elaina, while the girl is like the nervous, cute type of character. And then it goes into such a cool sequence. And this sequence is absolutely amazing. So they obviously try and catch her, where Elaina does what I think she's going to do. And she just drops. And it's so clever. If two people are coming at you, you just drop because they're going to crash into each other. You're going to be fine. And this next sequence of Elaina flying away from her pursuers is amazing. And I love it. It does everything that I want it to do. It gives us a really nice look at the town, as well as set up this really cool sequence of Elaina flying and seeing her powers and how good she is on the broom, where we actually get to look at the town itself, where there's canals and we get a use of the CGI where we're motion flying around with her. It feels great. We can see what I really like is the light bouncing off the canal is reflected on the buildings around and on her hat. I really like the attention to details because it made me feel like I'm in a really nice sunny country. It must be hot. It must be quite nice. And this water is clear. You don't really get that bouncy shine off the waves if it's dirty and murky. Probably the only difference where I can say it's probably not actually Europe if that's the case. Most of the rivers in Europe aren't great. All of these buildings, as we're going through the maze of buildings, they are colourful and they're tall. It really it doubled down on me thinking, hey, I'm in Europe. It looks beautiful. It turns into a bit of a game of cat and mouse where Elena's just too good. Nobody can even catch her. And then she asks, you can't catch me, just give up. And then the teacher arrives. I knew immediately who it was. I was like, oh my God, she's back. Because of how the past 4 episodes have been where we've not seen any repeating characters, I got really excited to see that we'd actually got a character who's come back. And it's Fran. Fran taught the students a lesson where she says age doesn't actually matter. She might be younger than you because obviously she's quite a young witch, but she can still, put you up for your money. She can run away and you won't catch her. It turns out it's been a few years. So the past 4 episodes have taken place in 4 years. It's been 4 years. We're probably also going to be going back to journeys in that time period as well. The class is absolutely exhausted. She gave him a extracurricular activity, bring Elaina to me using force or whatever if you can. And we get this really nice sequence where Fran and Elaina talk in a really cool office. The aesthetic of this office is so pretty, and it still does give off that Wizard of Oz vibes. And I guess that's fair because the Wizard of Oz was considered a wizard. Fran knew Elaina was in town because she obviously earlier tried to get into the school without permission. And they have a talk over tea. It really could still be Europe, guys. It really could. Witches are a thing in Europe, kinda. It's more law, but we do have law for it. Elena's mother has told Fran about the fact that she's travelling around and Elena's out with a diary, where her mum turns out to be worried. So Helena somehow hasn't visited her house in 2 years. Not even gone back for her birthdays or anything. No, Elaina, not going to go home. I really hope she is at least sending letters to her mum. Fran asks her, why did you want to become a traveller? Was it because of your mother? Hear me out, guys. I think Nikki, the adventures of Nikki, is her mum. I actually think Nikki is her mother, and I have a bit of a reasoning a bit later on, which we'll go to in a moment. She says no, it's because of the adventures of Nikki, where Fran also knows the book, where they're both talking about the last story within the book. She took on a student called Fowler. It ended up with Nikki giving up and going to live in the countryside as an ordinary woman, and then Fowler becomes the new traveller. So one door closes, another opens. So one journey ends, another begins. The fact that Nikki goes off to become an ordinary woman, and when we see Elena's mum, she's just a regular person. She's married, she's settled down into the countryside. I am 100% that it is the same person. Fran is like, is it because of your mother? Fran must know something. Obviously, she's been contacted by Nikki or her mum to obviously try teaching Elaina a hard lesson. I got to ask the question that how do the two of each other know each other to begin with? Who knows? But that's now going to be always in the back of my head whenever I hear that. We now learn that Fran also wrote a novel while she was travelling. And she herself was also inspired by Nikki. But after 100 pages of writing, she said that she read it back and it wasn't all that good and it kind of made her embarrassed. She said that she also left it and sold it by accident when she was in one of the cities while travelling. And the bag she had bought belonged to a legendary traveller. So she's embarrassed to think that somebody has read her book. See, we know from the beginning sequence that it's more than just one person reading her book. To end that sequence, that she hopes one day that she gets to read Elena's stories as well. Our next day goes into quite a fun part. It's almost a bit Harry Potter-esque with the teaching section, where the class is introduced to Elaina as a guest lecturer. We get a Q&A, and the first question is, do you have a boyfriend? Because of course it is. No, she doesn't. She's a traveller. It would be It would kind of be sad having a boyfriend if you were constantly traveling for 2 years straight without going home. We learned that Elaina is really good at all types of magic, so she doesn't specialize in one. And she also really likes the country she's in now. So the Royal Celestia is currently her favorite country, and she says, "I really mean it." And then it comes down to the "what color are your pants?" where the student kind of gets knocked sideways, and we don't get the answer to that. I don't know, if I had to guess, it's probably going to be pink or purple, because it'll go with the hat. The class attempting to use some magic on water, where they seem to be rising these orbs out of these buckets. We get to see Elaina as a tutor. This whole sequence kind of gave me the Harry Potter vibes, where we learn a little bit about magic. So the sequence doesn't just get to show us Elaina in action, we also get to learn a bit about magic and how you do it in the world. So you've got to be relaxed and calm. You need to have a calm mind to do it. And she also tells the guy who was overconfident that an excess of magic will also affect your spell, so you need to relax. So the keys to magic, apparently, is relaxing and chilling out. The nervous girl needs to take a step back. Elaina takes her back to square one, and she says, you need to just try getting used to something simple. Just try and lift the water up and down, up and down. Then you can, as you get more and more confident, you can do more. So maybe she's taking on too much at once. We do get to see Elaina generally laughing. This is probably the first time we've seen Elaina properly actually loving and enjoying herself. We see her, a more caring side to her and her as a teacher, where she really does even say, I really enjoyed the experience. And the lecture hall looks so great. It reminded me of mine, but mine didn't look anywhere cool as this. Mine was like the proper modern lecture hall for my university. And we see her freezing a fish and unfreezing the fish, which I think is the icon they use for the starting page. I've even said, rest in peace, fish. This poor fish. He looks frustrated. It's like, just give up, fish. I hope you kind of get put back in the water somewhere at some point. And we just get to see the student and the teacher working together. So we've come full circle with Elaina and Fran together at the front. So I think this is an Easter egg, as much as I want it to be. I mean, it's probably in the light novel, but who knows? Where we see the pervy student, kind of his wand goes crazy, so they're making fireworks and his explodes, and it just reminds me of Seamus in the scene in Hogwarts and Harry Potter where they're lifting up the feathers of Wingardium Leviosa and the feather explodes in front of Seamus. It just reminds me of the same sequence. We now cut to some really gorgeous lighting, and the whole lighting in this next sequence is great, and we all know how much I really appreciate a good cityscape. Fran takes Elaina to her favourite spot in town, which overlooks the sunset, it overlooks the harbour. We get to see how big the town is, and we also see people flying as well, where Elaina is leaving tomorrow and the students are going to be sad to see her go, and so will Fran. Elaina asks what they do after graduation, where we find out they're going to go and work, because this country has many jobs that require magic, and we've obviously seen the street performers. People are performing magic and showcasing their magic because they love it. It's something they love to do, not just for the sake of money. Fran likens it to the same as Elaina, where you're travelling because you enjoy doing it. People do things because it makes people happy, or it makes someone happy. That's the only reason they need to do it. They don't need a monetary gain. I didn't release initially on episode 1, but I do like Fran. Fran is one of my favourite characters. I like her as a character. She reminds me of myself in a bit of a weird way. Elaina really does say, I really like this country. Everybody's been smiling. I've been really moved whilst being here. Where Fran decides to try indirectly saying, what are some things that you like? Where we kind of get the travelling, the books, but she says, do you like flowers? Where obviously she's trying to push what she likes on her, but at the same time, Fran is so kind-hearted, we can forgive her. And she goes, do you like butterflies? Well, we know that Fran likes butterflies. She's trying to give her a gift, and she keeps going back to flowers, where she says, meet me tomorrow before you leave in front of the gate. We haven't seen Fran for long. It's been great to actually see her. Fran is late for their departure. So Elaina says, if I ever go to another country, I'm always going to feel sad when I see flowers because it will make me think of Fran. And it's going to make her sad because she's obviously had to go without her. So she says, I'm actually not going to wait. I'm going to go, and I don't want those sad memories. Where she turns around and we see a flower flutter down like a butterfly. And they're like these sakura petals, and some of them are actual butterflies, where she turns around again and she sees the entire class and Fran saying goodbye, where she says, did it make you happy? It's a really genuine smile, and It does. I feel like we've had some really nice character development for Elaina this episode, where she says, I won't forget. I won't forget you guys. It turns out that Fran and the class say they're always going to be cheering for her. It's such a nice ending. I love it. This episode was actually quite nice. Final sequence is back to the 6 months later, where we're back in town, where Elena's looking at the book and she turns around to see the Fran statue. I was going to mention the statue in the first chunk. I was actually going to say it's really nice to see they've got witch statues as well. And it turns out it's actually Fran. And she says that's a bit too cool looking, isn't it? And there's merch for everywhere for Fran, and there is merch everywhere. I really want the teddy bears. They're so cute. And she says next time we'll meet, I'm going to have a really interesting, embarrassing story for Fran, where that just cuts. And it ends with the whole, where is she going to go next? Who will I meet next? It was a really good episode. The episode was fantastic. We got some nice world building for the cities. This anime does that quite nicely. All the towns that Elaina has gone to have felt different. None of the towns feel too similar. Some of them a little bit, but they all have their own personality traits, where some don't like magic, some do like magic, some of these towns you have to be a mage to enter only. It's really, really nice, and I've really enjoyed watching so far. But now that we've had a character come back, it does make me wonder if we're going to see anything else come back later as well. Also interested to note, it's been 2 years since we first saw the episode 1, and we're on our 5th episode, so we've had 2 years pass by. So Elena's now 16, I think. I think she was 14 when she started out and became a witch. It looks amazing. And I know I keep rattling down this, but this anime really does look good. The light is good. They go in the fact that they made details of the water reflecting up onto Elena's face. They didn't have to do that. We saw the fact there was a river. They didn't have to, but to go that extra where she even goes under the bridge as one of her movements. And I love it especially if you've ever gone to a European city anyway, the canals or the water's a little bit clearer, especially like Cyprus. And you do see that reflection up on the top of the bridge. It is beautiful. I love it. It's a great episode, and it's quite nice. It almost felt like a bit of a wrap-up episode. It could have been a quite nice ending, but we've got a lot to go through still, so they're not quite yet. But it's a nice halfway point summary for whatever's coming next in the anime. Thank you, guys. Please make sure you are subscribed to the channel. It is a small growing channel, yes. I am hoping by the time we get more of us and we can finally get a few more friends, we can start doing a bit more with the channel, like live streams. We can maybe even try reacting to anime as it happens, so maybe even doing some proper stuff there. I want to do more of the channel, but I need a bigger following before I do that, just because it does take a lot of effort to do these videos. It takes about 5 hours in total to get it from me watching the anime to it up on the screen on YouTube for you guys. So please, please, please give that like and subscribe button a bit of love. Go give it some magical tap. The channel itself, Sunday to Monday, we are Moriartying it up. We are detective working. It's a very good anime. Would definitely recommend it if you're not watching it. It's a villain story, but it's very clever. So if you like Sherlock Holmes detective stories, come and have a look. Monday, Tuesday, we have Golden Kamui, and that is season 3, so come join us. If you haven't watched Golden Kamui, definitely put it on your binge list. It is definitely worth it. It's funny, and it does the 180s and punches you in the feels at the same time. Wednesday morning, Ikebukuro Escape Park, but do check the latest episode because I had to do an announcement on that one. And Wednesday, Thursday, we have Noodles, and Friday, well, you guys already know what happens on Friday. It's the Journey of Elaina. So thank you guys so much for joining me for this week. This week's been a great episode. I really enjoyed this episode this week. It might have been one of my favourites so far. I think it's all just the way it's been handled is quite nice. So I had a great week. I hope you guys have had a good week. Hope you're doing well. So I will see you again next Friday, guys. Bye-bye.